Transylvania, known to much of the world as the home of Dracula and vampires, is historically the site of much tension between modern-day Hungary and Romania. Even today, with it being home to an ethnic minority of Hungarians as well as many Romanians, there are some people that claim that it shouldn't belong to Romania at all. Who really deserves Transylvania? Or does any country deserve Transylvania? How do we reckon with a land that has historically belonged to various distinctly different groups? It is often stated that the personal is political, and for this topic, that rings very true. My name is Francesca Dumitrescu. Thank you for joining me today, and my interest in this topic comes from the fact that I'm Romanian, and I have a lot of family history in Transylvania. To me, growing up, Transylvania was always Romanian. I knew it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire over 100 years ago, especially as part of the Hungarian part of the empire, but until recently I wasn't aware of the present-day implications of not just the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the role Transylvania played in that, but to territorial disputes going beyond that. But before we go on, I want to make one thing very clear. As I'm creating this from a Romanian perspective primarily, I could have some inherent biases, so as much as I try to do my research as objectively as possible, please, if you feel like something is missing, feel free to contribute in the comments below. So what is Transylvania? Modern-day Transylvania is a region in the Eastern European country of Romania that makes up the central north part of the country. And it is home to large cities like Brașov and Sibiu, where I have family history dating back to the early 1800s, if not more, and Cluj-Napoca. The Romanian Institute for Research on National Minorities has identified prevalent populations in the counties of Covasna, Harghita, Mureș, and Cluj, as you can see in this map here. Transylvania became a part of Romania in 1918 after World War I, and this was confirmed by the Treaty of Trianon in 1920. About 1.2 million ethnic Hungarians live in Transylvania, which is about 6% of the overall Romanian population. So naturally, they are considered an ethnic minority by the Romanian government. So what tensions am I talking about? Historically, both ethnic Hungarians and ethnic Romanians have lived in modern-day Transylvania. And I want to be clear, nothing in my research suggests that the tension between Hungary and Romania currently is going to lead to some kind of war in the near future. It's nothing like that. The tensions are just that. Tensions. Things that both nations need to work around, a subject of international politics that I particularly find interesting. This topic first came to my attention when I saw the secular flag in Budapest. This flag holds a lot of historical significance that could be its own video, but in brief, it currently generally represents the Hungarian community of Transylvania. During the communist regime in Romania, the ethnic Hungarians and their culture were heavily suppressed, and after the regime fell, this flag began to be flown in Romania with much resistance. According to an essay by Attila István Sekeres, there has been a diplomatic dispute between Romania and Hungary regarding the raising of the secular flag in Hungary. Now, from my point of view, I do think there are valid concerns on both the Romanian and Hungarian sides in terms of how these tensions are dealt with and how they're interpreted. For ethnic Hungarians, there is a fear of loss of cultural and ethnic identity. I do believe that's a valid fear to have. For Romanians, there's a fear of Hungarian secession from Romania, which would include the land of Transylvania. Now, in this hypothetical situation, if this were to happen, I think we would inevitably come to the same situation where one ethnic group would want to make room for its culture, because both Hungarians and Romanians have such an interwoven history in Transylvania. And as we'll go into more depth now in regards to what the Hungarian community in Transylvania looks like, there's also the fear on the Romanian side of, not even the fear, the concern for the loyalty that ethnic Hungarians have to Romania, because at the end of the day, they are Romanian citizens as well because they live in Romania. I do think it's interesting that Hungary is pouring so much money into Transylvania, roughly 145 million euro in 2017, and similar amounts since, according to an article from Balkan Insight. The money is being used to finance schools, churches, and various media outlets, and many people suggest that this money is not without strings attached from the Hungarian government. Romanian politicians are divided on this topic, with some saying, well, it's good for the economy, but others stating that this funding creates a conflict of interest. Furthermore, Transylvanian Hungarians are consuming most of their media from Hungary, which in turn has influenced the Democratic Alliance of Hungarians in Romania, the political party of the ethnic Hungarians, to be very dependent on Hungary. Let's discuss briefly the implications of this on the global political economy. I think it's notable to say that both Hungary and Romania were communist states, and that regime fell in 1989 for both. In an article by Robert O'Brien and Mark Williams on the global political economy, they noted that previous communist states did struggle to establish functioning capitalist economies. So I wonder if that is reflected in this funding that Hungary is funneling into Transylvania. As in, they're trying to better establish a capitalist economy, but for Hungarians outside of Hungary. At the same time, Hungary and Romania have competing economies, so I believe that this does contribute to the tensions between the nations. I want to further break this down using international politics theory, starting with realism. A realist perspective makes the most sense here because in realism we talk about competition and conflict. And realism says that states will act on their own interest and for their own security and power. If we apply this to the conflict and tension in Transylvania, then this makes total sense. Romania wants to secure Transylvania as part of the nation, and it is in Romania's interest to have jurisdiction over Transylvania, as so many ethnic Romanians live there, and it holds so much historic importance for the nation. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Hungary has an equal interest in maintaining power in Transylvania. In its constitution, it is expressed that Hungarians living outside of its nation's borders are still members of Hungarian society. So of course, they would provide them the resources to be part of Hungarian society, hence the financing of so many institutions within Transylvania and the Hungarian communities of Transylvania. A significant tenet of realism that Hans Morgenthau emphasizes is power derived from human nature. We assume statesmen act in terms of interest defined as power. Both Hungary and Romania want to have power over Transylvania at the end of the day. So the interests I just outlined are in terms of how power can be managed. But at the same time, they're at a stalemate in terms of how much power each state really has. One could argue that the power they each have is very subjective. Power over the land, like Romania has, is not necessarily equal to power over media and community, like Hungary has. From a historical perspective, it's also funny because it's almost as if Transylvania cannot have any power on its own. There have been moments in history where Transylvania has been its own governing body, and so now that's what many people advocate for, power to this intercultural land. Before we get too ahead of ourselves, I want to hit one more point. We took a look at the realist perspective, but now let's take a look at regime theory. According to this theory, Hungary and Romania, besides being individual actors, are also part of several regimes, like the UN and NATO. That is to say that on some level, these nations must cooperate, and they do. I'm using this to reiterate that Romania and Hungary are not going to war anytime soon. Regime theory aims to explain how different states work together in a non-conflictual way. Anu Bradford states in an essay explaining regime theory that it inherently differs from realism because it emphasizes that states' interests are not necessarily conflictual and regimes are built on the distribution of power. All that to say that if the tensions in Transylvania really do escalate to a concerning level that demands attention, it will be dealt with appropriately and peacefully. So we've covered a lot in this video. So we've talked about what Transylvania is, the kind of interconnected history Hungary and Romania have, the secular flag and its modern day significance, as well as how Hungarian communities are being funded by Hungary itself, and what the whole relationship looks like from a realist and regime theory perspective. So where do we go from here? I don't have an answer for you today. I am providing an overview of what this situation looks like, and from here we can somewhat determine where it could go. These tensions could last decades, if not centuries. They could never be resolved. Or we could go another route where many ethnic Hungarians of Romania are currently advocating for more representation in the Romanian government and more autonomy. So maybe that will be granted in the future. But as of right now, I can say that it's been very interesting to learn, as someone with Transylvanian family and Transylvanian roots, to learn about what is going on in this region that so many people associate with mythology and movies, and to learn more about the politics taking place within the communities of it has been really interesting for me. And I really hope that whoever is watching gains something from this video, because there's truly so much nuance to every single instance in international relations, and this is just one of those examples. Before I go, all of my resources and citations will be in the description below if you want to take a deeper look at anything I've talked about. I'll also be linking a really cool video that really delves into the history of the region of Transylvania and how Hungarians and Romanians both got there. I think it's a really cool look on how, and it better explains how interwoven the history is. Besides that, thank you so much for joining me today on a discussion of Transylvania from an international relations perspective. And with that, thank you so much, and goodbye.